and we can start with 10 verses by each reader. So let me see the chat. Yeah.
I can go first. I'm not able to see hand gestures, so
Okay, you can go and then Nupur can go.
okay.
So I'll pause you after 5 verses just to take it slow, like what's going on. So you can read 10 verses and I'll pause you after 5, okay? So you
Okay.
can
We
start.
are doing only 33 today, right? 34,
Yes.
33.
Yes, bro. Till 33.
Okay, text one. Um, the great sage Maitreya told Vidura, when the king entered his city, it was very beautifully decorated to receive him with pearls, flower garlands, beautiful cloth, and golden gates. And the entire city was perfumed with highly fragrant incense. Fragrant water distilled from sandalwood and aguru herb was sprinkled everywhere on the lanes, roads, and small parks throughout the city. And everywhere were decorations of unbroken fruits, flowers, wetted grains, va- varied minerals, and lamps, all presented as auspicious paraphernalia. At, at these street crossings, there were bunches of fruits and flowers, as well as pillars of banana trees and betel nut branches. All these combined decorations everywhere looked very attractive. As the king entered the gate of the city, all the citizens received him with many auspicious articles like lambs, flowers, and yogurt. The king was also received by many beautiful unmarried girls whose bodies were bedecked with various ornaments, especially with earrings which collided with one another. When the king entered the palace, conch shells and kettle drums were sounded, priests chanted Vedic mantras, and professional reciters offered different prayers. But in spite of all this ceremony to welcome him, the king was not at least bit affected.
Yeah. So just pausing you here. So after the king met Lord and he's now entering his city, so it's being described here that how he's being welcomed with very natural and very auspicious ways, with sandalwood and different flowers. And after all this grand welcome, the king being such a great soul, he's not even affected a bit. That's what it says. And in the purport, let me highlight it. So Prabhupada mentions about that the great souls, they are like trees. It is said, therefore, that great personalities of power and opulence never become proud. And the example is given that a tree which is full of fruits and flowers does not stand erect in pride, but instead bends downwards to show submissiveness. This is a sign of a wonderful character of great personalities. Yeah, so we can continue with the next 5 verses.
Okay. Both the important citizens and the common citizens welcomed the king very heartily, and he also bestowed upon them their desired blessings. King Prithu was greater than the greatest soul and was therefore worshipable by everyone. He performed many glorious activities in ruling over the surface of the world and was always magnanimous. After achieving such great success and a reputation which spread throughout the universe, he at last obtained the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Suta Goswami continued, O Shaunaka, leader of the great sages, after hearing Maitreya speak about the various activities of King Prithu, the original king, who was fully qualified, glorified, and widely praised all over the world, Vidura, the great devotee, very submissively worshipped Maitreya Rishi and asked him the following question. Vidura said, "My dear Brahmana Maitreya, it is very enlightening to understand that King Prithu was enthroned by the great sages and Brahmanas. All the demigods presented him with innumerable gifts, and he also expanded his influence upon personally receiving strength from Lord Vishnu. Thus, he greatly developed the earth. Prithu Maharaj was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his method of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still follow in his footsteps. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prithu Maharaj because his activities are so pious and auspicious."
Yeah, thank you for reading the 10 verses. So now in these, from text 6 to 10, we see a great example of Vidura. So recently I heard a lecture of Radhanath Swami Maharaj where he mentions that if we are hungry, we get the power to digest food. So hunger is like a sense of necessity. Similarly, if we feel a need and enthusiasm and a hunger to hear the glories of Lord or those who are dear to Lord, from those who are associates of the Lord, then we can digest it and be transformed. So it's a great example that because the pastime is over, now Vidura is more eager to hear about Prithu Maharaj. So next, Nupur, you can start and then I think Gaur Kumar Prabhu can continue.
Okay. Hare Krishna. The great saintly sage Maitreya told Vidura, "My dear Vidura, King Prithu lived in the tract of land between the two great rivers, Ganga and Yamuna. Because he was very opulent, it appeared that he was enjoying his destined fortune in order to diminish the results of his past pious activities. Mahārāja Pṛthu was an unrivaled king and possessed the scepter of ruling all 7 islands on the surface of the globe. No one could disobey his irrevocable orders but the saintly persons, the Brahmanas, and the descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vaishnavas. Once upon a time, King Prithu initiated the performance of a very great sacrifice in which great saintly sages, Brahmanas, demigods from higher planetary systems, and great saintly kings known as Rajarishis all assembled together. In that great assembly, Mahārāja Pṛthu first of all worshipped all the respectable visitors according to their respective positions. After this, he stood up in the midst of the assembly, and it appeared that the full moon had arisen amongst the stars. King Prithu's body was tall and sturdy, and his complexion was fair. His arms were full and broad, and his eyes as bright as the rising sun. His nose was straight, his face very beautiful, and his personality grave. His teeth were set beautifully in his smiling face.
Yeah, so now in this from 11 to 15, mostly there's like geographical description. It meant Prabhupada says that this verse tells us that King Prithu actually lived in north of India because it says between the great river Ganges and Yamuna. And then in the next verse, there's a mention of the 7 islands. So during that time also, there was this clear distinction that there exist 7 islands, which we see in today's time as well. So pretty much everything, if someone asks like how what was the world look like then, so it's pretty much mentioning that 7 islands. Even Prabhupada mentioned the name of the islands in the purport. So let me just quickly So Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, South America, Australia, and Oceania, which is, I think, Atlantic, Antarctica. So everything was discovered even during that time. And in this verse, it mentions that demigods from higher planetary systems. So there was like a transport system which was taking place from heaven to earth. So they used to visit the earth and from here also. So that's what Prabhupada speaks in the purport here. And in this verse, Prabhupada mentions that how Prithu Maharaj is doing the worship of whoever is visiting, how is he welcoming them. Similarly, Krishna in the Rajsuya Yajna of Yudhishthir Maharaj, he himself took the responsibility and washed the feet of all the visitors, whoever came. So yeah, next we move to from 16. You can continue, Nupur.
The chest of Mahārāja Pṛthu was very broad, his waist was very thick, and his abdomen wrinkled by lines of skin, reassembled in construction of leaf of a banyan tree. His navel was coiled and deep, his thighs were of a golden hue, and his instep was arched. The black slick hair on his head was very fine and curly, and his neck, like a conch shell, was decorated with auspicious lines. He wore a very valuable dhoti, and there was a nice wrapper on the upper part of his body. As Mahārāja Pṛthu was being initiated to perform the sacrifice, he had to leave aside his valuable dress, and therefore his natural bodily beauty was visible. It was very pleasing to see him put on a black deer skin and wear a ring of kusha grass on his finger, for this increased the natural beauty of his body. It appears that Mahārāja Pṛthu observed all the regulative principles before he performed the sacrifice. Just to encourage the members of the assembly and to enhance their pleasure, King Pṛthu glanced over them with eyes that seemed like stars in a sky wet with dew. He then spoke to them in a great voice. Mahārāja Pṛthu's speech was very beautiful, full of metaphorical language, clearly understandable and very pleasing to hear. His words were all grave and certain. It appears that when he spoke, he expressed his personal realization of the absolute truth in order to benefit all who were present. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so from text 16 to 20, the description is about the beautiful bodily features of King Pṛthu, how beautiful he looked, because I think he was there externally, everyone saw him. So he's like a king, a Kshatriya, looking beautiful. So there's all those description is there. So we can continue from text 21. Gaur Kumar Prabhu, please. You can actually finish
Yes,
the
Prabhu.
chapter till 33. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. King Pṛthu said, O gentle members of the assembly, may all good fortune be upon you. May all of you great souls who have come to attend this meeting kindly hear my prayer attentively. A person who's actually inquisitive must present his decision before an assembly of noble souls. King Pṛthu continued, By the grace of the Supreme Lord, I have been appointed the king of this planet, and I carry the scepter to rule the citizens, protect them from all danger, and give them employment according to their respective positions in the social order established by Vedic injunction. Mahārāja Pṛthu said, I think that upon the execution of my duties as king, I shall be able to achieve the desirable objectives described by experts in Vedic knowledge. This destination is certainly achieved by the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of all destiny. Any king who does not teach his citizens about the respective duties in terms of Varna and Ashrama, but who simply exacts toll and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. In addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune. Pṛthu Maharaj continued, therefore, my dear citizens, for the welfare of your king after his death, you should execute your duties properly in terms of your positions of Varna and Ashrama, and should always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your hearts. By doing so, you will protect your own interests and you will bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death.
Yeah, so from text 21 to 25, uh, it shows how humble Prithu Maharaj is, even though he's such a great soul who just recently, in a few moments ago, he just met the Lord himself, and now he's bowing down and taking permission of all the great souls present in the assembly. And later on, he's mentioning that by the grace of the Supreme Lord, and then by experts in Vedic knowledge. So he's taking the shelter of the Lord, the sadhus, the Shastra, and I think couple of verses they mention about the importance of Varna and Ashram. So yeah, you can continue, Prabhuji.
I, I request all the pure-hearted demigods, forefathers, and saintly persons to support my proposal, for after death, the result of an action is equally shared by its doer, its director, and its supporter. My dear respectable ladies and gentlemen, according to the authoritative statements of Shastra, there must be a supreme authority who is able to award the respective benefits of our present activities. Otherwise, why should there be persons who are unusually beautiful and powerful both in this life and in the life after death? This is confirmed not only by the evidence of the Vedas, but also by the personal behavior of great personalities like Manu, Uttanapada, Dhruva, Priyavrata, and my grandfather Anga, as well as by many other great personalities and ordinary living entities, exemplified by Maharaj, Prahlada, and Bali, all of whom are theists, believing in the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who carries a club. Although abominable persons like my father Vena, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion, all the great personalities like those mentioned agree that in this world the only bestower of the benedictions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, or elevation to the heavenly planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
You can finish it, Prabhuji, till
Yeah.
33.
Yeah. By the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity can immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds during innumerable births, like the Ganges water which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. Such a process immediately cleanses the mind, and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. When a devotee takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is completely cleansed of all misunderstanding or mental speculation, and he manifests renunciation. This is possible only when one is strengthened by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Once having taken shelter at the root of the lotus feet of the Lord, a devotee never comes back to this material existence, which is full of the threefold miseries. Pṛthu Maharaj advised his citizens, engaging your minds, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded, you should all render devotional service to the Lord. According to your abilities and the occupations in which you are situated, you should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective in your lives.
Yeah, so from text 26, it's very interesting that he just met the Lord, and he's saying that there must be a supreme personality, supreme authority who is able to award the respective benefits of our present activities. So he's not saying that, I just met him and he's a supreme personality of Lord. I have seen him myself. And whereas he's mentioning about the great Mahajans, Uttanapa, Dhruva, Priyavrata, and his grandfather Anga, he's mentioning about them. He's not saying that, oh, I just met him, he's there, trust me. So he's bringing himself down to the level of the entire whoever is present in the assembly and trying to share the message of the Lord with all of them. And he's saying that Krishna is there, giving the example of the great souls, and he's saying everything is bestowed by Krishna. And then he mentions about this, what kind of material world is this, and how one can come out by taking the shelter of Krishna's lotus feet through bhakti yoga. So we saw like Varnashram was mentioned, and then how King Pṛthu, after mentioning about Varnashram, addresses the audience that ultimately, after the benediction of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, it is all given by the Lord. And after all of that is done, one can ultimately come out of this world is only by practicing bhakti yoga, taking complete shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. So that's it for today. And the till 33 we decided to read. So now what we will do is we'll just take a deep dive in this verse, the last verse of today's talk. So which is going to summarize everything. So I'll begin with this one. I'll just share the slides that I had. So I just name the title of today's talk as Our Journey Home. I'll just say quick prayers. Just a sec. Yeah. Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. So thank you everyone for joining. And I thank you, the great Manu, the great Nupur, and great Gaur Kumar Prabhu for helping to read all the verses that we discussed today. So we dive deep into the text 33rd of chapter 21, Canto 4. So let's go. So the first chapter, as we saw, there was like so much mention of Varna and Ashram. So recently there was a book that just came out, I think last year, by Her Grace Urmila Mataji, along with the co-author Ruchira S. Datta. I think her initial name is Rukmini Mataji. So they both came up with this book. It's called Career Dharma, The Natural Art of Work. And it mentions about how Varna Ashram is relevant in today's society. And it's like a complete change of I have never heard someone, present it so nicely. It's like a personality identification book. It is completely authentic and authorized. Uh, Everything coming through Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and through talks of Prabhupada. So we'll look into this. We'll go through few principles. So the idea to present this is that if any of you feel interested, it's just a trailer, a glimpse into the book. So if you feel interested or inspired to read this, then please go ahead, and it's available on Amazon. It's there on Kindle also. And there are various seminars done by Her Grace Urmila Mataji. She's Prabhupada disciple. And she's also on YouTube, the seminars are there. And she's also touring around the world, giving talks on this and doing the seminars in person as well. So she mentions few principles, around 9 principles of Dharma, and we will discuss 4 or 5 of them, just a very short glimpse of all of them, because it's very descriptive and very long. So the first principle is connecting our nature with our livelihood. What is my nature? So let's go back to the purport. So this is the last text that we read. I'll just read it quickly. Pṛthu Maharaj advised his citizens, engaging your minds, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded, you should all render devotional service to the Lord, according to your abilities and the occupations in which you are situated. You should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective in your lives. Purport by Prabhupada. As stated in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Swakarmana tam abhyarcha, one has to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's occupational duties. This necessitates accepting the principle of 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. Pṛthu Maharaj therefore says, Gune sarva, gune swa karma bhi. This phrase is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagasha. The 4 castes, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, are created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the material modes of nature and the particular duties discharged in those modes. A person who is situated in mode of goodness is certainly more intelligent than others. Therefore, he can practice the Brahminical activities, namely speaking truth, controlling the senses, controlling the mind, remaining always clean, practicing tolerance, having full knowledge about one's self-identity, and understanding devotional service. In this way, if he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord as an actual Brahmana, his aim to achieve the final interest of life is attained. Similarly, the Kshatriya's duties are to give protection to the citizens, to give all his possessions in charity, to be strictly Vedic in the management of state affairs, and to be unafraid to fight whenever there is an attack by enemies. In this way, a Kshatriya can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his occupational duties. Similarly, a Vaishya can satisfy the Supreme Godhead by properly executing his occupational duties, engaging himself in producing foodstuffs, giving protection to cows, and trading, if necessary, when there is there is an excess of agricultural production. Similarly, because Shudras do not have ample intelligence, they should simply engage as workers to serve the higher statuses of social life. Everyone's aim should be to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by engaging his mind in thinking always of Krishna, his words in always offering prayers to the Lord, or preaching about the glories of the Lord, and his body in executing the service required to satisfy the Lord. As there are 4 divisions within our body, the head, the arms, the belly, and the legs. Similarly, human society taken as a whole is divided into 4 classes of men according to their material qualities and occupational duties. Thus, the Brahminical or intelligent men have to execute the duty of the head, the Kshatriyas must fulfill the duty of the arms, the Vaishya class must fulfill the duty of the belly, and the Shudras must fulfill the duty of the legs. In executing the prescribed duties of life, so till here we see Prabhupada mentioning about the about the 4 varnas, and then he says, in executing the prescribed duties of life, no one is higher or lower. There are such divisions as higher and lower, but since there is actually a common interest, which is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are no distinctions between them. And taking this, Urmila Mataji in her book, Career Dharma, so she requests everyone that, especially we are coming from Indian backgrounds, we have our own biases and prejudices. So she says that do not use the Sanskrit of the 4 varnas, and she has given a new terminology in her book, which we will see now. So starting with the first principle, connecting our nature with our livelihood. What is my nature? So this is the question many of us have either thought of or are still thinking. And in the book, Mataji starts with describing the 6 kinds of wealth, the 6 kinds of prosperities. So these are the 6 prosperities, and she mentions that these are the wealth that one feels nourished when they are working. For example, people with a lot of wealth in this world, we have seen people who have a lot of wealth but are unhappy. And we have also heard of people with less wealth but satisfied and happy. And Mataji describes this is because of these 6 kinds of wealth. So those who have a lot of wealth, a lot of money, but they are still unsatisfied, dissatisfied, because they are not nourished by their own prosperity. And those who don't have so much money but still are satisfied, and that is because they feel nourished by one of these or few of these prosperities that matter to them. So the first wealth is Aishwarya, which means organizational leadership, money, and luxury. Next is Jnana, knowledge, Virya, strength, power, and health, Shri, splendid beauty, gracefulness, charismatic leadership, Yasha, meritorious fame and community, Vairagya, equanimity, and freedom. So I'm going to just go a little quick with the first principle. It's all described in a full section. Many chapters are there in the book. So just to give few examples from the book to understand what do we mean by the prosperity or wealth. So one example is, so Chris is a person who helps businesses set up management software. He customizes the software package for their needs and trains people within the company to use that software themselves for increased management effectiveness and efficiency. His career brings him a top salary and a position of leadership, also helping others to become leaders and increase their profit. Chris has some degree of autonomy in his work and has an expanding customer base. So primarily, he is enjoying Aishwarya. So the wealth that he is getting out of his work is Aishwarya. He is also constantly learning and helping others to learn, which brings him the wealth of jnana, which is knowledge. So this is example from the book where Mataji mentions one person working in a particular career and what kind of wealth or prosperity he's getting out of those 6 from this career. Let's see another example. Nar, and these examples are directly from the book. Nar runs an organic farm that includes a compassionate no-kill dairy. He's constantly learning about crops and farming techniques and enjoys having visitors to teach in person as well as sharing his knowledge online. He's very muscular and gets a good workout from the physical labor of the farm work. Nar loves selling milk and produce to the community and has regular community gatherings in his large home. So the prosperity of his career is mostly in virya, the wealth of physical strength, health, and vitality. To some extent, Nar also enjoys yasha and jnana. Yasha is the community fame or charismatic leadership. And let's take one last example. Vati is a web designer and artist. She works from home on a flexible schedule, keeping track of her hours and billing customers. She mostly works for non-profits, friends, and family members. The primary ways in which her career brings her prosperity are Shri, through the aesthetics of her work, because Shri is beauty, and Vairagya for the freedom and flexibility of the job. To a lesser degree, she gains the richness of Yasha through doing good work in her community. These are some examples of people working in specific careers and what kind of wealth or prosperity they are getting, out of these 6, which nourishes them. So even though some of, let's say, Vati might be earning a lot of money, but if she doesn't get these prosperities which nourishes her, she won't be satisfied. So if you would like, you can just note down the top 2, top 3, or the top kind of wealth that you think that nourish you in your career or that you would like to see yourself having in your career. So Aishwarya, Jnana, Virya, Shri, Yasha, and Vairagya. So now we will move to the fields of work. So the 4 fields of work are artistry, ideas, resources, government. So as I mentioned before, Mataji recommends not to use the Sanskrit, and therefore she has given these terminology so that we do not have those preconceptions and we can avoid, going by birth or by family tradition or the lineage. So this is completely by one's nature. So let's look at each of them one by one. So the field of artistry. So the person who is working in the field of artistry, the question they ask about their work is it beautiful and is it supportive? And these are the people who create functionality in society, and they are responsible for all pleasures and enjoyment in society. Some example for people working in field of artistry is plumbers, electricians, all the engineers, they come in this field. And most of the hobbies that we do in our daily life are mostly from this field of artistry. One description in the book Mataji gives is, so there was a person, a sword maker. He was making a sword, and a huge procession, a huge entourage, and like a big show of a king procession, it passed by his house, his workplace, and he didn't even got distracted or even looked at them because he was so absorbed in working on his sword making. So those are those people, they fall into this field who are completely absorbed. They don't know when the time just flies while they are working, and they are willing to sacrifice anything for the integrity and quality of their craft and skill. And they have the service mood, and this field is satisfied field. which means that people working in this field, they just want a nice place to live, a loving partner, good food to eat, dignity of being compensated fairly for their service and craft. So, and some of the all the musicians, most of the musicians come in this field. Doctors, not all doctors, but doctors like surgeon, dentist, they come in this field. And then there is field of ideas. So people belonging to this field, the question they ask about their work is it true and is it wise? And they will sacrifice anything for unbiased truth. They are the most straightforward people. For example, most doctors, teachers, they fall into this field. Let's say someone visits a doctor and they have a throat issue, and the doctor says you cannot eat any like ice cream for entire month. And if they are not straightforward, if they are not direct, if the patient says, oh doctor, I really love the ice cream, can I have once a week, or at least at least like 2 per week or per month? So and the doctor would be like, oh, so sweet, you love ice creams, okay, you can have them. No, those people don't belong to this field. So they will be very direct that no, you cannot eat ice cream. They are very straightforward. And same goes for teacher. So all of them, they belong to this field. So this field is mostly about people playing with languages, mathematics, philosophy, some of the poets, artists, musicians who communicate philosophy through their work, they come into the field of ideas. Most intellectuals, they come in this field. And this is a satisfied field. The people in this field, they are satisfied with internal, mental, intellectual stimulation. They are guiding system for the society. So moving on to the next field is field of resources. So the question they ask about their work is it sustainable and regenerative? So these are the people, this is an expensive field. We saw the last two fields were satisfied because the people in this field are always thirsty. They always want to grow. They always want to expand. And without people in this field, everyone will starve in the society, because they provide fabric, clothing, construction material, prosperity, wealth, raw materials from nature. They are the providers. And they will sacrifice anything to keep the ethical and sustainable flow. And the biggest employers, payers of taxes, biggest donors, they come in this field. Some example is like people in business, in marketing, in advertisement, salespeople, they all come in this field. And the last field is the field of government. So the question they ask is it just and is it honorable? They are like parents to the society. They are the caretakers of the society, not like the groundskeepers, but like a parent. They are ready to sacrifice their own lives for others. And the primary characteristics of people in this field is that they run into danger. The example is of firefighters, military people, politicians, NGOs, landlords, they all come in this field. And this is also an expensive field. They provide protection, security, law, order, and facilities to the society. So these are the 4 fields that Mataji mentions in the book. And there's like many chapters describing. So I just went very quickly through this because I know many of you will be having a lot of questions. So the idea is to just direct you, give you a glimpse that, how amazing, interesting this is. So these are the 4 fields that we discussed. And these were the 6 wealth, the prosperities. Now, let's say I belong to the field of resources. And the prosperity that matters to me that nourishes me is Aishwarya, Shri. These are the top 2. So organizational leadership, money, luxury, splendid beauty, gracefulness. These are the prosperity that nourish me. So now what I can do is I know that, okay, I belong to the field of resources. Now, the prosperities will help me. They will help me to specify the career in that field of resources. So maybe that I can start a business, or I can work in an industry where there is like a beauty industry where I get into marketing, advertisement, product management. So the role of prosperity is to help us determine our career within a field. So that was the first principle, that we figure out what is my nature, and we connect our nature through our livelihood, through identifying our field and the prosperities. And the next principle Mataji mentions is advancing through life while nourishing our nature. So one way she mentions is that you can know about your nature or what field you belong to by looking at your childhood. Usually, childhood troubling tendencies, or when you face some conflict or like a criticism or multiple times where a same behavior was coming out of you and the other person, could not relate to it. So, so those actually give us like a clue to our dharma, because our nature cannot be repressed. And if our dharma inclination is not recognized, it will come out in ways that can be disturbing later on. So some of the examples she gave, like there was a kid in the school and he used to beat his desk. He would start playing, like a sound like on his desk. And he used to get punished in school after hours every now and then. But one time a teacher just observed him and he took him to a separate room, and the kid got afraid, now I'm going to get punished. But what the teacher did, she gave him drumsticks and a drum, and he started playing, and naturally he was playing the drum, and later on he went on to become one of the big drummers in the world. Another example Mataji gives is, there was a devotee kid, and his mother asked him, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he was just sitting and, quietly, and he said, "I am thinking." And she said, "You are thinking, why do not you do something practical?" So the example she describes is, that kid, his dharma was in the field of ideas. And the people in field of ideas are philosophers, intellectuals who like to think. But the society, they treat them like thinking is inactivity. And that's why his mother, she said, "Why don't you do something practical?" And Urmila Mataji, she gives her own example that in her childhood, she used to get criticized, or, got a lot of complaints. Everyone used to tell her that stop teaching. Every now and then she used to hear that, because that was very natural to her. And then she said after many, many years, she realized that teaching is something very natural to her. And this is her field of dharma. So the second principle she mentions is that we should identify the values, the dharma, and then we can train ourselves in the information and skills. Usually in today's world, the education system, it only teaches about information and skill. That is why there is so much dissatisfaction in the society, because we can be trained in information and skills of anything, but the values, the dharma, is very unique to us only. So once you know your field of dharma, once you know what prosperity nourishes you, once you have identified your nature, the next principle is extending our prosperity to others. And here she mentions giving charity to society. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita also, that one should do tapa, jnana, and dana, that one should give in charity. And Srila Prabhupada, he told Her Grace Yamuna Mataji that if you not teach others how to cook, which was her expertise, as we all know, and Prabhupada said, if you not teach others how to cook, you will become envious. So Prabhupada, what Prabhupada meant was that you should like go and do this charity of sharing your prosperity with others. Otherwise, if we don't do charity once we have identified our nature, then we become envious. And we, in a few weeks ago, we had a whole talk on Tuesday about envy, which is basically that uh, if you have a nice car, it's great as long as I have a better car. If you have a great house, it's amazing as long as I have a better house than you. So that is pretty much envy. So every charity doesn't mean just money. It doesn't mean that you always have to give money because not everyone have a lot of money. I heard Vraj Vihari Prabhu once mention that if you are Bill Gates, then you can follow the 50% rule of giving charity, like sharing your 50% wealth and keeping the 50% and 25% to relatives or savings. You can follow that. But in today's world, when you have so many bills, your children's education, house loans, and so many things, the principle cannot apply to you because there is a variety of uh, there is a scale depending on the circumstances, time, place, and circumstances. So therefore, Mataji mentions that we can give in charity is our prosperity. For example, someone has a prosperity of Shri, which is beauty. So they can decorate the deities, they can decorate the temple, they can do the interior design of the temple, or they can teach others how to add beauty to the society. If someone is nourished by jnana, they belong to fields of ideas, they can give talks, they can dive deep into research, bring out amazing insights. For example, Urmila Mataji belongs to field of ideas. And I think she mentions Vairagya and Jnana are her the prosperities that nourish her. That is why we can see a great example of this book, Career Dharma, which came out out of her research and the work. So moving on to the next principle. So I'm going very fast actually. There is a whole section of a lot of chapters. I'm just giving a quick trailer, a quick teaser, a glimpse into the book. So if any of you feel inspired, you can just quickly go on and read it. So next principle comes after you have identified your field, you are giving charity. Next principle is ethical and meaningful work of value. We can, let's say I have identified my field of work. I know what prosperity nourishes me, and I'm also doing a lot of charity, but I am doing criminal activities. Therefore, it is very important to learn the value of ethical and meaningful work, doing honest work, paying people fairly, treating people fairly. So she mentions like work of value. So let's say someone, they identified their right field, they are doing charity, they are doing the honest work, they are treating people fairly, they are ethically they're doing paying everyone fairly, but they are selling cigarettes, they are selling tobacco. Therefore, the principle says work of value, which means that one should address meeting people's real needs. Because in today's society, we see that there are manufactured artificial needs. For example, there are casinos, there are bars, all the four regulative principles. If you see in this world, there is a whole industry created for each regulative principle, that how you can indulge in each of them, creating artificial manufactured needs. So therefore, one should have a work of value not harming the society, but meeting the people's real needs. So that was a quick glimpse of Career Dharma book. So we just discussed a few principles. There are around 9 principles. And if you have questions, I'm not expert. I'm just still going through this. And it is really helpful and very giving me a lot of clarity. So I just wanted to share this with you. And now we are back to our purport. And the next chapter we are going to discuss is gaps versus gains. So let's go back to the purport. We just read it till here. We discussed the Varna system. So we'll continue from here. The question may be raised that since the Lord is supposed to be worshipped by great demigods like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and others, how can an ordinary human being on this planet serve him? This is clearly explained by Pṛthu Maharaj by the use of the word yatha adhikara, according to one's ability. If one sincerely executes his occupational duty, that will be sufficient. One does not need to become like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, Lord Chaitanya, or Ramanujacharya, whose capabilities are certainly far above ours. Even a Shudra who is in the lowest stage of life, according to the material qualities, can achieve the same success. So Prabhupada mentions that the question might be raised that, how we are supposed to worship, comparing ourselves to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, or great souls, basically. So this brings us to the topic of discussion. The next chapter in our journey home is gaps versus gains. Usually, as soon as we wake up, our mind starts complaining, right? Because I have observed many times, this is with me, that as soon as I wake up, the default setting of my mind is to just complain so many negative things, irrespective of how was my previous day or how my life was. And we look at materially, or either materially or spiritually, we look at the gaps. Oh, I have to earn so much, I have to buy a better house, I have to do this much saving. Or let's say spiritually, I have to overcome so many anarthas, I have to become a pure devotee, I have to do this much, that much. Having the awareness of where we are is important. But seeing the gaps, what it does to us is we look at the past with regret. And in the present, we are dissatisfied. And in the future,